On the surface, the Yorkshire village of Emmerdale is the picture of pastoral tranquility, a community of farmers, publicans, and families bound by generations of shared history and rivalry. Yet, beneath the rolling green fields and the familiar facade of the woolpack, a sinister secret festered for months, hidden in plain sight on the very border of Butler's farm. The operation run by Celia Daniels, J. Griffiths, was not merely a criminal enterprise. It was a grotesque perversion of the rural idyll, a case of modern slavery exploiting the most vulnerable, concealed behind the legitimate veneer of agricultural labor. The fallout from its exposure is now poised to tear apart the life of one of the village's most resilient matriarchs, Maura Dingle, Natalie Girob, in a crisis that will test her family, her reputation, and her freedom to their absolute limits. To understand the peril Maura now faces, one must first comprehend the meticulous and cold-blooded cunning of Celia Daniels. She was no stereotypical, overt villain. She presented herself as a savvy, if somewhat brusque, businesswoman, a modern farmer with ambitious plans. Her adoption of Ray Walters, Joe Absalom, added a layer of complex humanity, a suggestion of a nurturing side. This carefully constructed persona was her greatest asset. Her farm operated on a dual tire. The visible tire was the legitimate front, the movement of livestock, the interactions with locals like Maura, the appearance of productivity. The invisible tire was the prison. Workers like Ania, Alia al-Shababi, and Bear, Joshua Richards, were not employees but commodities, entrapped through a mix of coercion, deception, and threats. Isolated, malnourished, and living under the constant shadow of violence, they were utterly cut off from the world just yards away. Celia's evil was bureaucratic and calculated. She understood paperwork, signatures, and chain of evidence far better than she understood empathy. Her targeting of Maura was deliberate. Maura represented a perfect combination of need and respectability. As a farmer struggling to keep Butler's farm afloat amidst personal and financial turmoil, Maura was susceptible to a lucrative offer. Her established, well-regarded name in the local farming community provided the perfect smokescreen. Celia wasn't just seeking a business partner. She was seeking insulation and a scapegoat. Maura's journey into this nightmare is a masterclass in incremental entrapment, a slippery slope where each step seemed rational at the time. Her initial misgivings were textbook and telling. Celia's casual attitude towards the various legal paperwork. For a farmer of Maura's experience, licenses, transport documents, and welfare certifications are the bedrock of legitimate operation. Her unease was the instinct of an honest professional spotting a fellow cutting corners. Yet, she overrode that instinct. Why? The answer lies in the immense pressure on Maura Dingle. Financially stretched, emotionally drained from family crises, and bearing the weight of a dynasty's legacy on her shoulders, the promise of easy, flowing cash from the turkey venture was a siren call. Celia expertly exploited this vulnerability, offering a lifeline that appeared golden. In this context, Maura's decision to get on board is a tragically human one, a short-term pragmatic solution blinding her to long-term catastrophic risk. The discovery of the dodgy invoices was the moment the veil tore. This was no longer about corner cutting. It was evidence of systemic fraud. Maura's immediate withdrawal, she wanted nothing more to do with their partnership, was the correct moral and legal response. But with Celia, there was no simple withdrawal. Unbeknownst to Maura, she had already stepped from the riverbank into quicksand. Celia's security measures were her masterpiece of villainy, designed to permanently ensnare Maura. The first layer was documentary. By ensuring Maura's signature was all over everything, contracts, orders, financial records, Celia created a forensic paper trail painting Maura as a fully aware and active participant. On paper, there was no distinction between the legitimate turkey side and the trafficking operation. Celia had meticulously blended them. The second layer was corporal and far more horrifying, the body of Anya. Anya's death from infected wounds is a stark indictment of the conditions she endured, neglect as a weapon. The decision by Ray and Celia to force Bear to bury her on Mora's land was an act of pure, premeditated malice. It transformed Mora's property from a business address into a potential crime scene, physically linking her to the gravest of crimes. This was no impulsive act of concealment. It was the deliberate planting of evidence, a ticking time bomb waiting for police dogs and ground-penetrating radar. Celia's death did not defuse this bomb, it armed it. With the mastermind gone, the investigation would naturally follow the evidence she left behind, a trail leading directly to Maura Dingle's doorstep. The police investigation following Ray's death unfolds with a chilling procedural inevitability. D.S. Walsh, Amanda Ryan, is not portrayed as a bully, but as a dogged professional following the clues. The sequence of interviews is telling. Robert and Victoria, then Joe Tate, then Maura. Joe's lack of praise is crucial. His history with Maura and the Dingles provides investigators with a narrative of a capable, tough, and sometimes ruthless operator, further corroding the idea of her as an innocent dupe. The timing is excruciatingly cruel, compounding the drama. Kane's Jeff Wardley, recent cancer diagnosis has plunged the family into a separate, profound trauma. Their return from the hospital, a moment of vulnerable intimacy and looming fear, is shattered by the arrival of the police. Kane, the family's traditional protector, a man of action and often violence, is rendered helpless. His physical strength is meaningless against a search warrant and handcuffs. This powerlessness in the face of institutional accusation is a new and terrifying battlefield for the Dingles. The discovery of the piece of evidence during the search, which could be anything from specific documents Celia planted, to forensic traces linking to the workers, or even the discovery of Anya's grave, is the point of no return. Maura's arrest is swift and public, a humiliation that ripples through the village. Her presumed guilt will become the talk of the Woolpack, judging glances exchanged at the village shop. Maura's predicament is a legal and reputational labyrinth. Proving her innocence is not merely a matter of telling the truth. She must dismantle a case built on documentary evidence, a mountain of paperwork bearing her signature, authorizing activities she claims to have known nothing about. Her defense will hinge on proving she signed in good faith for a legitimate turkey venture, a complex task requiring forensic accounting and proof of Celia's deliberate deception. Physical evidence, the potential human remains on her land. Even if she can prove she didn't order the burial, she faces charges of perverting the course of justice or being an accessory after the fact unless she can demonstrate she had no knowledge, a difficult claim when the body is buried on her property. Circumstantial evidence, her profitable partnership with Celia, her initial silence upon discovering the dodgy invoices instead of going directly to police, and the testimony of those like Joe Tate who question her character. The absence of the mastermind. With Celia dead, there is no one to corroborate Maura's story of being manipulated. The court may see a convenient narrative where Maura shifts blame onto the deceased. Caleb's William Ashe offer of a top lawyer is the first essential step. This battle will be fought in legal filings and interrogation rooms, not in farmyard confrontations. The lawyer's strategy will likely involve finding the survivors, locating workers like Bear, who can testify to Celia's sole control, the conditions, and that they never took orders from Maura. Their credibility and ability to testify will be pivotal. Digital forensics, scouring communications between Maura and Celia for evidence of Maura growing suspicion and Celia's manipulations. Character witnesses, rallying the village. Will long-standing friends like Vanessa or even rivals come to her defense? Will the Dingles' notorious reputation work for or against her? Undermining Celia's character. building a portrait of Celia as a master manipulator with a history of coercion, separate from her relationship with Maura. The true cost of this scandal will be measured within the walls of Butler's farm. Maura's relationship with Kane, already under the strain of his illness, will be tested by separation, doubt, and the frustration of his inability to fix the situation. Her children, Maddie and baby Isaac, face the trauma of a mother in custody. The wider Dingle clan will rally, but their methods, suspicion, intimidation, taking the law into their own hands, could jeopardize the careful legal strategy needed. Maura's greatest asset is her own inherent toughness. She is a survivor of betrayal, loss, and violence. This crisis, however, attacks her core identity, her competence as a farmer, her role as a provider, and her hard-won respectability. Her fight is not just for freedom, but for her very sense of self. The modern slavery storyline in Emmerdale moves beyond sensationalism to ask uncomfortable questions about complicity and visibility. How could such evil exist next door? What makes a fundamentally good person overlook warning signs? In Moira, they have created a quintessentially modern tragic figure, not evil, but compromised, not guilty, yet not entirely blameless in her pursuit of survival. Her path to exoneration will be the harvest of a truth far more complex than simple innocence. It will require unearthing every hidden detail of Celia's operation, confronting her own moments of poor judgment, and relying on the very community now quick to judge her. As the police present their neatly stitched case, Maura Dingle must begin the painstaking work of unpicking every thread, in a battle where her future and the soul of her family's farm hangs in the balance. The fields of Emmerdale, it seems, can hide more than just turnips and sheep. They can conceal monsters, and the devastating fallout when they are finally brought to light.